sen alla andra får använda handmick då.
Ja, nu är streamen igång i alla fall, så det här är som att gå ut på webb.
Ja, vad bra. Det syns inte än.
Nej, det ordnar sig. Direkt sen.
Så det här är nummer 1 då, men du...
I turn it on already now, yes. Yes, 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 1, hello, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, okay.
It's okay, yes.
Strömmet.
Alltså jag har en bild.
Ja.
Jag har gjort om lite grann. Den ses på den lite.
Ja, på den.
Den.
Ja.
Hejsan. Tom Lindström. Jag är med eftersnack. Man säger så. Jag har några budskap där.
Notera. Den heter Iva, Tom.
Ja.
Ja. Så.
Där ser jag.
Ja. Och så klickar vi på den där. Precis. Då är vi där.
Ja. Någonting sånt. Ja, jag vet inte. Det där funkar men det.
Ja, jag hjälper.
Tom Lindström. Tom Lindström. Ja, okej. Tjena Per! Samma sak sa Birgit pensionerad. Sen så föreslog jag
Hello everyone, a warm welcome to IVA, the Royal Swedish Academy of Engineering Sciences. My name is Johan Weigelt, I'm the Secretary of the Academy and also the Executive Vice President of IVA. I'm very happy to welcome you to this seminar, which is a collaboration between IVA and JSPS, the Japanese Society for the Promotion of Science, and the Sweden-Japan Foundation. And it's a part of a series of seminars. We organize 1 to 2 seminars per year in collaboration with JSPS, and we're very thankful for that. And extremely thankful today for being able to bring in 2 very distinguished speakers from Japan. So with that, I would like to hand over to the moderator of the day, Mikael Lindström, professor at KTH, and also a member of IVA.
Thank you, Johan. The forest industry has an important role to play in the transformation to a bioeconomy. Japan, like Sweden, has a large forest industry, and Japan has invested heavily in R&D to meet these challenges of the future. What could Sweden learn from Japan? So welcome to this seminar to learn more about research and development in the forest sector in Japan, and what strategies the Japanese government has chosen for the future. We have 2 distinguished guests from Japan, Professor Yano, Research Institute for Sustainable Humanswear in Kyoto University, and Professor Dr. Watanabe, Ministry of International Trade and Industry. We also have 2 known professors in the area from Sweden, Professor Lars Berglund and Professor Tom Lindström, who will give their perspective. And we are also very grateful to have State Secretary Elisabeth Bachtemann, representative from the Ministry of Enterprise and Innovation, present in the discussions. By that, I will hand over to Professor Yano to talk about research and development in Japan.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And my name is Hiroyuki Yano from Kyoto University. First of all, I'd like to thank to IVA and JSPS for giving me this opportunity to talk about my research on the nanocellulose. Today, my talk is about the future direction of bio-based material inspired by nano, not only nano, but also to microstructure in plant. So my research goal is to commercialize cellulose nanofibers, nanocomposite. And always the challenge is cost and performances. So just so little bit, I'd like to introduce about what is nanocellulose. cellulose nanofiber is a fundamental element of plant cell wall. So here you are looking at hierarchical structure of wood. Wood consists of fiber, and wood fibers, it looks like steel's reinforced concrete, composite, and reinforcement is cellulose nanofiber, and lignin and hemicellulose are embedded in the cellulose nanofibers with 10 to 20 nanometer wide. So about 50% of wood consists of these cellulose nanofibers. Of course, any kind of plant resource can be used as a source for these cellulose nanofibers. For example, seaweed, rice straws, water weed, and cassaba's parenchyma cell. Also, any kind of plant resources can use it as a source for these cellulose nanofibers. That means huge amounts of cellulose nanofibers exist on Earth. And why the people are so interested in this nanomaterial is, in addition to the abundance of these resources, and also its incredible high performances, because of its semi-crystalline extended chains, cellulose nanofiber exhibit quite high strength, 3 gigapascal. This is 7 to 8 times stronger than mild steel, while the density is just 1.5. Do you know the density of mild steel? That is 7.8. So 1/5 of the density, but 7 to 8 times stronger than steel. Also, low thermal expansion is our interest, using for electronic devices and high specific surface areas. But I would like to say the most important advantage of this nanofiber is cost. If we look at pulp as a nanostructured fiber, okay, the cost of the pulp only 50 cents. So anyway, let me back to in 2001. I demonstrate the potential of this cellulose nanofiber in 2001 using kind of sheet molding process. And I made a cellulose nanofiber sheet first and impregnate phenolic formaldehyde resin. And then the composite attained 400 megapascal in bending strength with a density of just 1.4. This is almost equal to the strength of magnesium alloy with a density of 1.8. So encouraged by these performances, I started to the discussion with companies, and also did a preliminary experiment with companies. Then I started my first big project, and also the cross-industrial vertical integration project in 2005. I invited 7 companies for this project. That is pulp and paper companies, chemical companies, automotive companies, and electronic device companies. Because this material needs such a spectrum, wider areas. So then in my third project, I fixed my target to the automotive parts. Then now we are going on the fourth project that's starting from the wood until the production of automotive parts. So especially in this project, we are quite interested in reinforcement of general polymers, such as polypropylene and polyethylene using for automotive parts, or polyamide. Because if we replace 5% of 270 million tons, this is the global plastic market in 2010, by $8 per kilogram sales nanofibers, it generated 100 billion market in the world. So to fix our target to automotive parts, we surveyed. We studied chemical modification of cellulose nanofiber surface, because cellulose nanofiber is quite a hydrophilic material, as you can see here. This is 1% cellulose nanofibers, but another 99% is waters. Very hydrophilic materials. Okay? But most of the polymer using for electronic devices or automotive is hydrophobic. So somehow we have to modify the surface of cellulose nanofiber to have a good affinity. Oh, sorry, PowerPoint suddenly stopped. Something strange, but just wait. Good. Let's see. Okay. So cellulose nanofiber is quite a hydrophilic material, and most of the polymers, engineering polymer, is hydrophobic. That's why we chemically modify the surface of cellulose nanofiber to give a hydrophobic nature on the surface. At the same time, we have surveyed what kind of chemical structure of surface has a good affinity with cellulose nanofibers. We tried various kind of functional groups incorporated on the surface of cellulose nanofibers. The process is like this: esterification of the surface of cellulose nanofibers using various kind of functional groups, and then mix with polymers, polyethylene, polypropylene, or polyamide 6 using twin screw extruder. That's a melt compound. And then subject to the injection molding, and then check the mechanical properties and distribution of nanofiber in the polymer. So this is one of the examples reinforcing efficiency of each functional group incorporated on the surface of cellulose nanofibers. Quite, how can I say, the various reinforcing efficiency we can obtain. That means surface structures of cellulose nanofiber is quite important to have a good reinforcing efficiency of polymers. For example, when we mix cellulose nanofiber with high-density polyethylene, this is the acetylated cellulose nanofiber. So this is untreated cellulose nanofiber. The reinforcing efficiency is not so high. However, if we use a long alkyl chain, it improves the dispersibility of cellulose nanofiber in polyethylene. But the interesting thing is those kinds of chemicals improves much more mechanical properties of polyethylene. Then we found that such a kind, after injection molding, so the crystal structures of folded polyethylene grows from the surface of cellulose nanofiber uniformly. But this one, long alkyl chain did not. So we found that not only the dispersibility of cellulose chemically modified cellulose nanofiber in the polymer, but also the structure important. So those things are just fundamental experiment to know the potential of cellulose nanofiber reinforcement, because those kind of chemical treatment quite costly. But I think the advantage of cellulose nanofiber is pulp. This is a nanostructured fiber, consists of cellulose nanofiber. The cost is just 60 or 50 cents per kilogram. But nanofibrillation increase the cost, and also chemical modification increase the cost. Then we try to chemically modify the pulp first, and then disintegrate this pulp during melt compounding using twin screw extruders. This process allows nanofibrillation of chemically modified dry pulp and will mix with polymers, so that we can save the production cost a lot. Then we subject these polymers to the injection molding. Let's see. This is the X-ray tomography of injection molded samples. This one is cellulose we prepared cellulose nanofiber first, then chemically modified it and mixed with high-density polyethylene. And this is a modified pulp mixed with high-density polyethylene using twin screw extruders. Still, we can see the pulp inside. And this one is cellulose nanofiber. And, but when we use chemically modified pulp kneading with polyethylene, the process allows nanofibrillation and compounding. This process, this technique saves the cost a lot. This is the SEM images, raw material, and after kneading, a modified pulp still exists such a large fiber, but chemically modified pulp after will disintegrate and will disperse in the polymers. And here we are comparing the mechanical properties using chemically modified pulp. And this one is chemically modified cellulose nanofibers. So almost the same. And modified cellulose nanofibers mixed with polypropylene like this. So just by adding 10% of chemically modified pulp, we can improve the mechanical properties of polypropylene almost 2 times. So, encouraged by these findings, we established production process at our institute. So, starting from wood chip, and we digested making pulp. The cost could be around 50 cents per kilogram. And a refiner treatment is so preliminary disintegrate surface of a pulp. And then we make sheet, dry pulp sheet. Dry pulp sheet, the cost probably $2 per kilogram. And chemically modify this dried pulp sheet. And then the cost maybe $5 to $10 per kilogram. Then after crush, then just mix with resin pellets and this crushed pulp sheet using twin screw extruders. This results in the high performance cellulose nanofiber reinforced polymers. And also we can injection mold it. Here I can show you some example of the result. This is a polyamide 6 composite molded at 230 degrees. This is a 20% glass fiber. This is a 10% cellulose nanofibers. We got almost same mechanical properties with 20% glass fibers for 10% cellulose nanofibers. And strength almost equals. But challenge is 30% glass fiber reinforced polyamide 6 is we are ongoing for this challenge. And this is a polypropylene composite molded at 190 degrees. This is a typical automotive material using polypropylene with talc, 20%. Here you can see the mechanical properties of the typical material using for automotive, for polypropylene. And when we add cellulose nanofibers, chemically modified cellulose nanofiber 10% to this, we can improve the mechanical properties 2 times of typical, ordinary talc-based polypropylene. When even we compare with 50% cellulose fiber, this is not nanofibers, like a pulp or ordinary pulp, cellulose fiber, by adding 50%, but mechanical properties like this. However, still, we cannot reach the same performance with 20% glass fiber reinforced polypropylene. However, glass fiber reinforced polypropylene has a disadvantage in terms of the recycle abilities. As you know, glass is quite brittle. So when we try to recycle this glass fiber reinforced polypropylene, the mechanical properties decreases with the increase of the number of the recycling. However, cellulose nanofiber-based polypropylene keep same mechanical property even after recycling of 2 or 3 times. This is because of the nanofiber advantage. At the same time, in order to enhance the performance of this composite, we try to make a foam using supercritical carbon dioxide or nitrogen. And after forming, we could get such a kind of tiny bubble inside. This one is without cellulose nanofiber. This is with cellulose nanofibers. Here we are comparing the mechanical properties of the composite. By forming cellulose nanofiber reinforced high-density polyethylene, the bending modulus, Young's modulus decreases with decreased density because of the forming. However, when we compare the density 0.6 to 0.7 of this formed cellulose nanofiber reinforced high-density polyethylene, still it maintained high Young's modulus like 2.5 gigapascal, which is almost equal to the mechanical properties of talc 20% polypropylene, not polyethylene. This one, the density is around 1.05. This one is a density less than 0.7, much lighter, but keeping the same mechanical properties. So this is our ongoing, under the construction of our test plant at our institute. So starting from raw material wood chips, we have a digester here, and also we have a refiner here to surface nanofibrillation. And also we have a paper making machine here. And we're going to introduce twin screw extruder here and big size injection molding machine here. So another topic is transparent materials developed in Kyoto universities. Because as you know, anyway, let me show you these videos. Sorry, this is Japanese. But this is a cellulose nanofiber sheet
これセルロース
just
ナ
says
ノファイバー
nanofiber
のシー
sheet.
トです
But
ね。
if
透明
we
にして見せ
impregnate
ます。
acrylic
はい、
monomer,
これでちょっとじゃあ、
This
待ってください。
says nanofiber
戻
sheet
っておいて。
become transparent because
った。
nano element
薄くしたセルロースナノファイバーは
uh,
液体に浸す
avoid
と透明
light
になる。
scattering. So
強
even
くて軽くて
adding
しかも透明。
60 or
この特徴を生
70%
か
of
して
self
今その
nanofiber
用途として期待される
in the
のが
acrylic monomer,
モニ
we
ターの
can
素材。
keep the transparency
この
of
透明
acrylic
のセルロースシートの表面に
and
有
also
機 EL という発
reinforce
光物質を塗ることで
the
超
thermal
薄型
expansion
で
of
しか
this
も強いディスプレイが
material
できちゃ
reaches
う。
almost
よ
equal
って
to the
早く実用化お
that of
願い
the
します
glass. So that we are thinking to use this cellulose nanofiber for as a substrate, for the substrate of the organic EL display, or something like that. Here, I just want to explain about the mechanism of this. As you know, the component less than 1/10 the size of the optical wavelength can eliminate scattering. That means if we reinforce optically transparent polymer using nanofibers, we can keep the transparency of the polymer while increasing the mechanical properties and also decreasing the thermal expansion. So this is a history of our material development, transparent materials. I started at first using bacterial cellulose in 2003. Then we succeeded in making nanofiber using wood pulp. And then in 2008, we succeeded in making 100% cellulose nanofiber optically transparent film with low density. We succeeded in depositing organic EL on the surface of those optically transparent film. Then in 2010, we succeeded in making transparent crab. Actually, the fundamental element of crab is chitin. Chitin also forming nanofibers, as same as cellulose nanofibers. So after the removal of protein or calcium carbonate from crab, and then resin impregnated, we can make crab transparent. But this result could be just using for souvenirs, not for industrial application. Then, on the basis of this result, we try to make paper transparent. The concept is quite simple because cellulose nanofiber is quite costly, but the pulp is quite cheap. So important things is to realize performance of cellulose nanofiber in the final product. I thought, we don't need to make nanofiber first. Important things is whether we can realize performance of cellulose nanofiber in the final product. So we try to realize the performance of nanofiber while keeping the cost advantage of pulp. That is just 50 to 60 cents per kilogram. What we did is we removed lignin and hemicellulose from wood and to make pulp. And then before drying, we acetylated on the surface of cellulose nanofibers. This enables, this avoids, hydrogen bonding between cellulose nanofibers. Then we impregnate resin between these cellulose nanofibers of pulp. This is an acetylated pulp sheet. After resin impregnation, paper become transparent. So this is another example of optically transparent paper. And I would like to emphasize the advantage of this technique compared to the cellulose nanofiber-based material, because in the pulp, like this, cellulose nanofiber orient parallel to this direction. So this nanofiber orientation gives high reinforcing efficiency than entangled cellulose nanofibers. Therefore, just by adding 25% pulp decreases thermal expansion of acrylic monomers, that is 200 ppm until 13. The same reinforcing efficiency was obtained when we use nanofibers at 40%. So this is due to the orientation of nanofiber in the pulp. So now we are quite enthusiastic to make a bio-automotive. Already I put the name Kyoto 1. Kyoto is a famous city for Kyoto Protocol. So by using cellulose nanofiber-based material, we want to reduce the weight of automotive and reduce the carbon dioxide emission. If we use cellulose nanofiber to reinforce natural rubbers, just by adding 3% of cellulose nanofiber, we can obtain same performance with ordinary tires, which has a how can I say that, carbon black. So 1/3 of the tire is carbon black. We can reduce the weight. Also, we can make windows using optically transparent paper. And also the bodies, we are quite enthusiastic to replace mild steel to the cellulose nanofiber-based polymers. So, conclusion. How many time do we have? 3 minutes? Okay. This is the most important point of my today's presentation. Okay, so this is very important. So, this is I'm explaining about the future direction of biomaterials. Currently, most of people are enthusiastic to disintegrate wood into the molecular level to make ethanol. But ethanol only can make something commodities polymers. Just we can replace fossil resource polymer to the bio-based polymer. That the performance is not so high compared to the fossil resource polymer. However, when we use cellulose nanofiber, saving energy, that means saving cost, we can make a high performance product. So probably the next stage must be using pulp. Much more we can save energy consumption, that means a cost, but we can also make a high performance material like this compared to the nanofiber. So in future, we can make or we can transform wood directly into the airplane parts or automotive parts. Actually, I don't know why, I don't know how, but if we look at this map, futures, we can generate or we can create automotive parts directly from wood. Because what is wood? Wood is a porous three-dimensional polymer composite composed of crystalline nanofiber. This is wood. Amazing. No one expects such a kind of high performance or material we can generate beyond we can generate it. This is a nanocomposite, three-dimensionally controls structures, and then lightweight. So in this century, we have to create new, novel material beyond our capability, because we cannot create or generate such a kind of high performance material. So I think to make high performance material beyond our capability to survive this centuries, combination of 0.1% human being job, but 99.9% must be tree job. Our human being is not so smart enough to survive this century by our own abilities. So this is a member of my ongoing project. And thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Professor Yano, for a very inspiring talk. We will hand over to Professor Watanabe, who will talk about strategy to create this advanced biomass industry. Thank you.
止めたが、いずれも拒否された。米国側の学者たちはこの動きを受けて、今年3月、教科書の記述は正しい。
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure and honor for me to make a presentation today. At first, I'd like to introduce a little bit myself. My name is Watanabe. I'm a director for pulp and paper industry in Japan. And then today's main topics is the future vision and challenges of pulp and paper industry in Japan. The subtitle is Creation of Advanced Biomass Industry. And this is an outline. Today, I'm going to make a presentation. At first, I will explain a current condition of the pulp and paper industry in Japan, and then a policy for pulp and paper industry to carry out sustainable development. This is very important. And then creation of advanced biomass industry, centering of pulp and paper industries. It has passed 3 years since I became director for pulp and paper industries. The 3 years ago, I drafted this concept. And fourth, I will explain the future vision and roadmap in the pulp and paper industries. And fifth, this is today's topics, cellulose nanofiber. This is mentioned in Japan revitalization strategy that was published by our Prime Minister Abe. And sixth, I will explain a policy for cellulose nanofiber in Japan. I belongs to Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry. Mainly, I will explain within my ministry territories. And 7, the new market creation strategy of cellulose nanofiber industries. Nowadays, later I will explain. Already some actual product has already in the market. And 8, to boost up non-cellulose market, we set up one group that is called Nanocellulose Forum. And discussion point. And last, I will explain which area is expected for win-win between Sweden and Japan in this field. Okay. This is the current situation. I think this is the same globally, especially developed countries, due to the decrease of domestic demand of paper and paperboard, and increase of imported papers. The domestic production activity is shrinking, about 1% decreasing every year. It means after 10 years, 10% of market will disappear. Very serious problems for pulp and paper industries. It means pulp and paper industries need to reconstruct their business structure in order to keep sustainable development in the future. This is the story of boiled frog. Do you know this story? Yes, it's a little bit ironic story. If we put frogs in the boiled water, of course he surprised and he tried to get out of it. But in the cold water, frog, we put it. He feels anything, just swim. But gradually, the temperature is more high. Very, very gradually, the frog doesn't feel anything. And finally, he is dead. This is very ironic story. This story's common metaphorical use is a caution for people to be aware of even gradual change, lest they suffer eventual undesirable consequences. For the pulp and paper industries, don't you think the same situation is happening? But we should avoid it. Of course, president of Japanese major pulp and paper companies understand of it. For example, president of Oji Paper, he said, "We are not any more pulp and paper industries." President said, that was surprising for us. But anyway, they already understand we should, pulp and paper companies should not be a boiled frog. Then this is pulp and paper industry's policy for sustainable development. The decline of domestic demand, but sustainable development policy is needed. And I think there is two pillars. One is a restructuring of pulp and paper businesses, strengthening of the existing business, deployment to growth markets around the world, advanced new business development, high added value. And second value is diversification of profit sources outside of pulp and paper business. This is very important part. Creation of advanced biomass industry, we called it. Later I will explain. This is an image of advanced biomass industry. On the left side, Japan is also a very big forest. I think 70% of area of Japan is covered with forest. Forestry industry provide some raw materials to paper industries. And on the right side, this is the user industries, automotive, electronical, machinery. A lot of user industries are existing in Japan. And middle over here, now pulp and paper industry is making just paper. But pulp and paper industry should reconstruct diversification of revenue, profit, except of just making papers. And please look at this area. This is a chemical industry. Chemical industry, mainly their raw materials comes from crude oil. But everybody knows, future, the crude oil will exhaust it. And chemical industry is also thinking they would like to use more biomass materials. I think near the future, pulp and paper industries, chemical industries might be merged into one industry. We called it advanced biomass industry. This is the future vision and roadmap in the pulp and paper industries. If the pulp and paper industry think about diversification of their businesses, the best way is to expand their business based on core competence area. What is core competence of pulp and paper industries? First area is energy. For pulp and paper industry, they have a lot of per generation equipment utilizing lignin. Lignin boiler is very, what can I say, energy saving way to dry the papers. A lot of Japanese pulp and paper industry is now thinking to generate electricity and distribute to industry, not only industry, but also general market. And second core competence is a biorefinery. Now, they are making just paper. But bioethanol or other raw materials of chemical engineering, they can make from biomass. And third area is nanocellulose fiber. This is very expected area. I think so. Our Prime Minister Abe has a strong minister. The first thing he did was to publish one sustainable economic development plan that is called Revitalization Plan of Japan. But that story is very simple. He said this cycle is very important. Investment and corporate profit and wages high and consumption is also increasing, and then company invest, corporate profit, wages. Very simple theory, he explained. And in a Japan revitalization strategy, cellulose nanofiber is referred. This strategy is very big book, but so far as I know, actual name of materials, the only material is mentioned, cellulose nanofiber. And after mention of revitalization strategy, I belongs to Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry. But whole government would like to push these materials for the future. I contacted with other ministries, for example, Ministry of Fishery and Forest, Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Construction, something like that. I contacted with all ministries. Why don't you push these materials? This is very expected new materials. And then finally, we agreed to start a liaison committee in governing board for the policy. Ministry of Concerned regularly utilize the liaison. For example, before requesting next year's budget to Ministry of Finance. In such a case, of course, there is a very strong red tape between Ministry of Economy, Ministry of Environment. Sometimes struggling. This is my area. Don't come here. It's every time happen. But this case, I tried to, before struggling, we should discuss based on this demarcation. Ministry of Forest and Fishery, you are in charge of both forestry and agriculture industries, which supply the domestic raw materials. This is your area. This is my area. Basically, in charge of manufacturing industries. This is my area. And Ministry of Education, Science, and this is Ministry of Environment. They are strongly focused on the global warming issues. and Ministry of Education and Science and Technology. Their main topics is a basic research. This is the basic concept of demarcation among ministries. This is a policy for non-cellulose nanofiber in Japan, mainly Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry. Why CNF in Japan? I explained fossil resources free society is need for industry people are thinking about it. And to create the new business, especially for pulp and paper industries, you should not be a boiled frog. For efficient use of forest resources in Japan, we have a lot of forest, just like Sweden. The top-level researchers, Professor Yano, not only Professor Yano, but also Professor Isogai is get the Marx Wallenberg Prize last month. I think he is the first person who received this prize in Asian area. Very honorable for us. And what is the challenge? After all, market formation and expansion. And policy direction. We supported Professor Yano in the field of research and development project now. And support the international standardization. If we think about actual business, without standardization, we cannot do anything. This is very important. The support sees and needs matching between CNF suppliers and user companies. Okay. I believe Nobel Prize would be formed in this field in the future. This is very important message for Sweden people. This is a national project. I think Professor Yano-san explained he started cellulose nanofiber research and development activity year 2001, but Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry started national project year 2005. It means about 10 years, only 10 years when we started this project. But continuously, many projects we organize. Professor Yano-san has a lot of budget from my ministries. And this is a new market creation strategy of cellulose nanofiber. Unfortunately, the price of making cellulose nanofiber is still high. About, this is calculated into US dollars. Nowadays, I think 100 or 70 US dollars per kilogram dry. 5 years later, we target this price should be more cheaper one, under 10 US dollars. And then, more 10 years, we can reduce about 5 US dollars. If we can reduce cost, we estimate about 10 billion market will be created per year. This is just in Japan. if we think about globally, more market will be created. Okay, time is almost just at more 10 minutes, something like that. This is a nanocellulose forum. We establish consortium, technology consortium, composed of academic people, industry people, and government. This is newest information. Just only 1 year has passed. We established this forum. 170 companies are entered our members, and 54 people from universities and government also became a member of it. METI, MAF, MEXT, MOE, and Ministry of Construction. All members, all ministry became this forum members. And local government also became. This is a name of prefectures. Many prefectures governors also agreed to become this forum. I will explain what forum is doing. The first area is survey technology trend. Share information, exchange and disseminate activities. Several times in a year, we hold a themed technical seminar for our members and provide venue for exchange. After the meeting, we hosted drinking party. Yeah, how do you do? What are you doing? Something like that. Many people exchange name card in a different industry field. And distribute information and materials on forum website. And the second thing forum do is promote collaborative research and development and commercialization. Actively support and promote members with research and development and commercializations. However, no direct support for independent individual members who are participants in research and development. And promote standardization of nanocellulose. Nanocellulose is new materials. We have not yet international standard of it. But if we think about actual industrialization with using these materials, we cannot avoid standardization. But new material, it is difficult to make a new standardization. So in this forum, we organize industrialization committees. What is need? What is the most best way to evaluate or characterize cellulose nanofibers? Something like that. We are now discussing. And then, last month, fortunately, we could propose new standard items in ISO. Technical Committee 229. And this committee is main field is nanomaterials. So far as I know, in the same TC, Canada team has already proposed some proposals. Cellulose, nanocellulose crystalline. So Japanese people, Japanese group, catch up, and last month we could propose a new area, cellulose elementary fibrils, based on Professor Isogai's technology, utilizing tempo catalysis. And then now we are going to start a discussion. We are now proposing, please join our discussion. So why don't you join us from Sweden? Please think about it. Yes, and second is inform and research and development facilities, equipment. Of course, Kyoto University has a good equipment. In Tokyo University, Isogai-san also have a lot of evaluation equipment. For the industry people, it is difficult to buy such a very expensive equipment, but we can provide information. Where is the place you can use it? That is very important information we provide for them. And then trainee personnel. This is quite a new area. So Professor Yano-san or Isogai-san can make a lecture for all peoples if they need. And information on non-cellulose samples. In Japan, many pulp and paper companies has already invested pilot plant. They started to provide their samples to the another industry people. And in the forum, in the website, if the people see that web page, which company is providing samples, the people can know through the website. And then this is an actual product. Today I have, this is a present for you. Yes, in here. Yeah, please. This is a Mitsubishi pencil company. A little bit difficult to explain the mechanism why this is good for writing. In the ink, they added cellulose nanofiber. Okay? The rotating of the board attached to the tip will lower the viscosity of the gel ink. Yes. Excellent. And the conventional gel ink changes in viscosity due to the shear force is not enough to provide a nice writing line. Ink formulated with cellulose single nanofiber will change viscosity properly, regardless of the environment, thus providing always clear writing. You can buy in the shop now please recommend to another people. And this is a second sample of actual product. Nippon Paper, they are making diaper. Basically, diaper is used for child, baby. But this is for elderly people. And they are using some deodorant seed in here. I bring example of diaper. Yes, here. I have already destroyed surface of it in here. I learned this is the seed deodorant. The nanomaterials is the surface area is very big. Can you understand? The nano is very small materials is complicated. The surface area is very big. And then on it, metal ion, copper or silver, that has some catalysis effect on antibacterial or deodorant materials. A large amount of carboxyl groups are produced on the surface of microfibers by tempo oxidation. The materials ions or nanoparticles are introduced to these carboxyl groups by ion exchange treatment. Cellulose nanofiber with metal ions or nanoparticles can be used as antibacterials and deodorant materials. Already you can buy it. But unfortunately, in Japan, if you need, I recommend Nippon Paper. Why don't you sell it in Sweden? And I think time is already exhausted. The last thing, I will explain some discussion point. Technology push and market pull. The cellulose nanofiber is, I think, technology push at first. Yano-san is trying to what is a mechanism, and this is quite new materials. But the problem is which is a new market, what is a killer application? That is a very big problem. And second point is technology convergence. Interdisciplinarity is very important if we think about innovation. Not only wood science, but also another discipline. Technology convergence is very important. And collaboration among academia, industry, and government. And sustainability is also important. And close innovation to open innovation. Japanese big company has a tendency to develop everything just inside the company. But this is any more work. We have to cooperate other industry people or researchers. Okay, and this is the last my presentation. Which area is expected for the win-win between Sweden and Japan? I think basically pre-competitive area. Competitive area is not I think everybody understands about it. And second area is international standard. As I explained, Japan has already proposed some work items, the TC229. Please join this proposal activities. Especially characterization, nanocellulose, CNC, and CNF is now we are discussing. And that's one thing we have to overcome. That is a safety evaluation. Toxicity evaluation. Nanomaterial sometimes problem for the health. I believe cellulose nanofiber is not so serious because in some food already included nanofiber materials. 何でしたっけ? Nata de coco, something like that. In that food, cellulose nanofiber is included, but nothing had happened. We can eat cellulose nanofiber. And actual product development for the ballpoint pen or diaper is if Sweden company would like to contact with Japanese user industries, of course, it is free. You can do it every time, anytime. But this is a competition area. I belongs to government. Government would like to think about Japanese position. If possible, please discuss with Japanese company and the Japanese company. So, thank you very much. This is my presentation. Everything is finished. Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Watanabe.
Yeah.
It was a good insight in the strategy of Japanese government. Thank you very much. Then we will have Professor Lars Berglund giving some comments from the academic perspective. Please, Lars.
Thank you very much. So I'm at KTH and I'm directing the Wallenberg Wood Science Center, which is I think it's the largest effort on forest products related research in Sweden ever. And so we're roughly spending half our funding on nanocellulose. But it's quite a long story. I came to KTH in 2002 and heard about a conference presentation by Professor Jano. So in 2003, I went to visit him. And I remember an email conversation. I was asking him, what is the goal of your research? And he said, the goal of my research is to understand the soul of the tree. And I think that's a typical, perhaps a typical Japanese comment. And but it's it's a very interesting comment because it actually captures the essence of this field, which is to make us realize that nanocellulose is very different from anything else that we worked on previously. It's very different from plant fibers in general. It's different from pulp fibers. And Professor Jano has been a great source of inspiration for, I think, all of the research in Sweden. We have a fairly good international position, and much of the inspiration comes from his group. I like to point out that he's actually done two things. He was a pioneer in cellulose nanofibers, and now, as you could tell, he's working on applications. And I think that's an interesting comparison with respect to the situation in Sweden. He's actually worked on both aspects, basic and applied. The funding level, he has, for his own research group, something like 30 million Swedish crowns per year. So that's roughly what we are spending in the Wallenberg Wood Science Center all over Sweden on this topic. So there's a slight difference there. I think also it's interesting to notice that the funding is used in a slightly different way. So it's used, a large proportion is used for equipment. I think that is very often an obstacle for academic research in Sweden. If a new field emerges, we need substantial investments in equipment, and that's normally quite difficult. But in this situation, basically, the lab of Professor Jano, if you collect all the equipment that is relevant at Invensia and KTH, you still don't have the same setup as he does in his lab. So it's quite remarkable conditions. We've had a couple of European projects at Invensia and KTH, and I think if you look back, the outcome of those are, at least in terms of direct applications, is actually quite modest. And I think the main reason for that is that nanocellulose is something completely new. It's very specific. You first need to understand nanocellulose itself. It's definitely nanotechnology, and it's a new type of nanotechnology. So you cannot just say that I will develop this particular application and go ahead and do it, as you can perhaps if it's something based on pulp fiber. It's much more complicated than that. So I think we need to have respect for that. And I think it's very clear that it requires new competence. At the universities, we have been able to build that competence through the Wallenberg Foundation, but also through recruitment, so that we have the necessary competence from several different disciplines. So I think that is one of the issues. You need competence in colloids, you need competence in materials, you need competence in cellulose, and many other aspects as well. And that's one very specific aspect. And I think from the point of view of industry, there's a very big leap to be taken here. You need to build a new competence compared with what is available, at least in the forest products industry today. So I think that's also a very important point. If I look at the way we operate in Sweden when there is a new you just have to look at the scientific literature. It's clear that there is really a breakthrough in this area. But I think we are suffering a little bit from our, how can I say, our national culture, that we tend to be very cautious and we tend to be very democratic when we distribute research funding. I think what is striking here is the risk-taking, and perhaps we need to be a little bit more bold in the future when we work in this area. We need to be ready to take risks. Yes, so coming back to the initial statement there that Professor Jan is trying to understand the soul of the tree, I think one of the issues that is interesting is that the character of cellulose inside the plant, inside the tree, is quite attractive. And when we disintegrate it, when we take it out from the wood tissue, we are actually doing substantial damage to the structure. And this is one of the more important research areas at the moment. How can we extract it from the plants without inducing damage to the cellulose? I think that's pretty much it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lars. We have Professor Tom Lindström giving a little bit more industrial perspective.
I've summarized my message in a number of bullet points. Well, industrial perspective, I mean, I'm working at a research institute and KTH partly, and I would say that I could qualify in terms of that I've been deeply involved with all commercialization of nanocellulose in the Nordic countries with the Borregaard with Stora Enso and UPM Kymmene. They have participated deeply in our research programs, basically. But I think here I've summarized it. Bioeconomy, that is usually we mean by fuels, chemicals, and materials. And I would say that neither fuels or chemicals is something that the industry is really interested in. They're interested in materials to do something with the unique cellulose structure. And the most promising candidate for this is basically nanocellulose. And if you're not convinced of that, you have listened to the Japanese perspective, which I think is very important in this context. Something that I learned during the 80s, we had the company I was working for, a motor company. We had I created a strategic alliance between Nippon Paper and Moda at that time. And then I learned basically that the Japanese company, they have a very long, you could say, vision-oriented perspective on the research. They were talking about a very long time, whereas Swedish companies, they have a much shorter time. So there's a time frame which is very, very different. You could say about the companies and funding agents, they are looking for short-term projects with diminutive funding sometimes, particularly when you come to upscaling, which is a problem which we'll come back to here. We have some good academic funding, I mean, at universities and also to some extent at the institutes, but basically I've said the yellow posted stick is from the wall win rather than long-term strategic consideration, which is to some extent true and some extent not true, but this is to stretch it a little bit. What is unique here is that the Japanese government, as far as I've understood, they are active in helping companies to make links with international research. So this is a government, and you have heard here today, I mean, this is not something that the Swedish government does. So this is it's a long strategic direction, so to say. This is interesting. I heard about the Nano Forum here. Japan nurtures collaborations between different industrial sectors, and we have been talking about the different industrial sectors here. We have investigated that and had different workshops, blah, 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 for a long time, but we have not been able to get to those collaborations, even if we talk about it a lot. One could say also that this is to some extent dependent on the fact that the companies, they don't want to act in big groups because they look at, what is needed for my company, and then they work along that road. But as you have understood, nanocellulose as an area, requires collaboration. So I think that because we are dealing with a hefty, complicated material under various conditions. Swedish companies are not active in pursuing cross-sectorial collaborations. And now we come to the critical thing, and that is upscaling. As I said, there is some money for, you could say, fundamental academic research, which is pretty good here in Sweden on nanocellulose, but basically upscaling is the problem. And that is the, I would say, Death Valley. This is just to compare it, that the Japanese government funding for nanocellulose reinforced composites for the automotive industry is 300 million Swedish crowns. I think I stop there. This is just to put the perspective. I mean, I know I'm participating in similar projects in Sweden, but we are not dealing, in the order of this money. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. And I would like to ask State Secretary Elisabeth Bäckteman to make comment from government side.
Yes. First of all, I would like to thank Eva for the invitation to this occasion. I think this is a a highly relevant and very important theme, as we have heard from the presentations and from the comments, and as we all know. And I would also like to express my thanks to Dr. Watanabe and Professor Yano for your presentations, which are very inspiring. And I would also like to just confirm the relation between the Swedish and Japanese government and countries, that we have a long-standing political cooperation within this field of forestry and its different areas of application. And I think we also share a common view on of the important values attached to the forest. And we also share the same understanding of the importance of sustainable management of the forest and its different uses. And we believe that we can develop that further in the future. And I think we are two countries with maybe an extra high ambitions when it comes to the transformation to a fossil resource-free society. And I would also like to tell you about how we work concrete with these issues. And one way to further deepen this cooperation, these sort of links between our countries, is that the Minister for Rural Affairs, my minister, Mr. Sven-Erik Bucht, he will travel to Japan in the beginning of March next year. And he will there participate in an initiative by the Swedish Embassy to promote the forest. And this initiative is called the Treasures of the Forest, and it's a result of the large interest from both the Swedish and Japanese stakeholders to exchange experiences and further encourage innovation and the use of forest. And I mean, as we heard, the situation, maybe something about the situation I would like to comment. And Sweden and Japan being very forest-rich countries, approximately 60% of Sweden is covered by forest, and that's a little less than the Japanese case. But as we know, that holds an enormous potential for new climate-friendly products. And as we heard here today, there is a great potential because basically everything that is produced by fossil raw resources or material could be produced by bio-based forest products. And in recent years, as we know, the development, the digitalization has led to lower demand from traditional products. For newspaper, for instance, has affected the production of printed paper. But I think maybe one challenge is that for now and maybe for a couple of years to come, the condition in the industry on an overall level is quite good, actually. So I think the transformation will not come so easily due to the fact that the situation in the industry is very pressing. But we can see in a couple of years that the situation will change. A couple of examples is that packaging is increasing, and the breakthrough of the internet-based companies, such as Amazon, for instance, and other internet sites, will increase the demand for smart packaging. And also, when it comes to food and food products, the increase for smart packaging will increase. And also for another trend is the increased demand for hygiene products. And we see a large number of new products, and it was really interesting to see these very concrete examples here today with the ink in this pen and the diaper for elderly people. Very concrete examples, and I think that's what we need also in order to be able to sort of understand on a more, I mean, we who are not in science, who are not professors or researchers, in order to be able to grasp what this could be about. I mean, the number of products we can't even imagine, but when we come to these very concrete and fine, sort of day-to-day, very practical goods, I think that's very, very interesting and very helpful for development. Maybe I should say something short, just when it comes to what measures could be taken from a governmental point of view or perspective. And I guess we come back to this in the panel as well, so I won't take too much time. But I think there is no sort of golden bullet or one single way here to foster this development from a government's perspective. I think there are many steps that must be taken simultaneously, and which probably will be very hard to sort of coordinate and get sort of a very controlled or a symmetric development here. I think we will need to work on different levels and in parallel sort of lines that on the same time. But just to mention one concrete example from Sweden is how to create incentives for cooperation between different sectors, such as, for instance, the forest industry, the plastic producers, and the textile industry. And I think now this is currently done in Sweden through the project Bio-Innovation, which I think many of you in here are familiar with. And it's funded by business and government in cooperation. And we have research institute and universities together in this project, also contributing with finance. And I think that's a good example, which Dr. Watanabe explained also from the Japanese perspective on a bigger scale, but how we have to cooperate between industry, public sector, and the universities. And the Swedish government is also looking into how we can foster a bio-based economy in an efficient way, and this will be a very important component in the research and innovation bill, which will be put forward to the parliament during next year. And the time perspective of this bill will be a 10-year perspective, and I think that's very important when we see the timeline that Dr. Watanabe put up here on the screen with the perspective of 2030. I think we need to really stress ourselves from the government's perspective to sort of prolong the time perspective when we are discussing what kind of research and what kind of innovation we will sort of finance from the public sector, from the government. We have to stress ourselves and push ourselves to sort of prolong the timeline when we know these things take very long. I mean, we have a long period of research and innovation and development ahead of us. Another thing that was addressed here recently was the question of venture capital, actually, and what the state could do in order to contribute in terms of state venture capital. And the government is now working with a bill that we will put forward on the Parliament's table shortly, hopefully, and how we could sort of restructure the state venture capital system in Sweden in order to be able to finance more of these really early investments that needs to be financed, but also when it comes to the question of upscaling and taking the first steps to demonstration plants of various sorts. How can the state venture capital sort of stimulate and help these very riskful and costful investments that needs to be made in order to, in the next step, be able to sort of commercialize on a bigger scale. I think I stopped there in order not to take too much time from the panel.
Thank you very much, Elisabeth. I would like to ask all the participants to join up for a small panel discussion, and then we will open the floor for the audience also. So if we start in Japan, the companies are investing a lot in the creation of an advanced bioindustry. How do you set this up in Japan?
Our ministry has some budget to boost private companies' activities. For example, if they would like to make a pilot plant, we could prepare a subsidy for making for them. But the main topics is energy conservation or energy reduction, something like that. Only story for productivity is not enough. But also we ask them, can you reduce energy consumption? Something like that. If they can answer for them, we can provide a budget for them to make a pilot plant. I think Nippon Paper or Oji Paper also get some budget from my ministries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. If we look on the Swedish perspective, the companies in Sweden, they should have some responsibility in this transformation. How do we make it happen?
I think government funding is very important here. I mean, in order to bridge, and it's really upscaling, as a very costly thing, so we need to come over that in one way or another economically. That's so far you could say that the applications that we have been involved with has basically been on to producing nanocellulose, and they have been reasonably large investments, but we are talking about... Okay. Sorry. But then when we come to the next step, more applications, we use, for instance, nanocellulose in paper making, which is a very low-tech application. As soon as we come to higher levels of applications, then I think a lot of money is needed for that, because people cannot take the risk. And how that is being shared between the government and companies, this is an issue which I leave to the government.
It was interesting to hear from Elisabeth that there are some rearrangement in this seed funding, the very early, but also for the next step. If we look on the size of the domestic market, it differs very much. Japan is roughly 128 million people, and in Sweden we are 9.5. Is that affecting how you do this product development? You have a domestic market that is quite large, I would say.
Yes. Okay. I think that's one of the advantages of Japan, because we have more than 13 times bigger population with the probably same land areas with Sweden. And that means we have various kind of industries, starting from the forestry and the pulp and paper and automotive company or chemical companies living together in a quite tiny island. So that's very easy to discuss and very easy to communicate with interdisciplinary discussion. And then we can create new concept and then something new. I think that's an advantage of our country.
I agree with Professor Yano. That is the reason why Japanese industry is very competitive in the world. That is one reason, I believe. Yeah.
How we contract this in Sweden? I mean, we are 9.5 million.
But I guess, I mean, it's no new news. That was hard to pronounce, because I mean that's what we've been used for in since long, and I mean we've been quite successful historically, and for the present in being very innovative and capable of finding markets outside Sweden for our products. And when it comes to forest and forest-related products, we have an exceptionally high net export, for instance. And I think, I mean, that's the only way forward. Well, for the moment, the number of people living in Sweden is rising quite rapidly, and that could be, I mean, a growing market, but it won't be enough, of course. So we have to use, I guess, the same strategy and be even more competitive and have even sharper, so to speak, strategies for how to be even more competitive in this new, I mean, very global and globalized world where we have new economies being more and more competitive and giving us a tough ride.
Yes.
I think a very simple example is this nanocellulose forum, because that's it's not a big effort to organize this, and I think that is something that would be possible to do in Sweden. And the beauty is that companies get to meet each other. So the forest products companies are meeting potential customers. They're discussing the new technologies. They are meeting various partners along the value chain, and I think that's important. The difference is, of course, that many of the Japanese companies are extremely strong in terms of research and development, but I think it would be possible to use that idea.
I was thinking in Sweden we have something that is called public procurement, that you buy things from the government. And could that be something that could be used to facilitate this change to more bio-based material?
Yes, I think so. I mean, there's an ongoing discussion on innovation procurement. How the public sector, how the government, how local authorities and other official bodies that are dealing with procurement, how they can sort of foster innovation when they are describing what they want to buy. And so that's one perspective when it comes to procurement. And another perspective is that the public sector, through procurement, could contribute in sort of trying to enhance a growing market when we are demanding sort of new products, new innovative products. So I think there's two perspectives of procurement, which are very interesting.
In Japan, you have something similar?
Yes. For the concept of recycling, we have one law. The name is Green Procurement Law. For instance, papers. If the government procure the papers, about 60% waste paper should be included. Otherwise, Japanese government doesn't procure the papers, something like that. But that is a concept of recycle. We don't have not yet innovation procurement programs, not yet. But that sounds very wonderful. If we could do it, that's a good idea. Yeah,
I think it's a very powerful tool for government to use. Yeah. Academic research in the area of is very advanced, both in Japan and in Sweden, and in some way we are measuring academic impact through citations. And Professor Jano is an example where you've done a lot of basic research, and now you are doing a lot of applied research. Is that possible to go in both applied and basic research at the university in Japan? Is it allowed, or are you an exception from this?
I think, of course, we need both. And of course, it would be nice our papers would be accepted for the high impact journal. But at the same time, also, we need to convince the company by showing the evidence, the potential of our product, by showing some evidence. That's not easy to be accepted for the high impact journal, but we should keep on that. That's my idea.
Yes.
We have to do that both.
Yes. I'm sensing a little bit that you feel that is a little part of your responsibility to do this tech transfer.
Yes.
If we comment from Swedish university side, I think there has been a shift that you're measuring a lot on the citation and impact.
Yes, but I think at the same time the Swedish technical universities, they have a strong tradition of collaboration with, in particular, larger industrial companies. So I don't think it's going to change completely, as for instance it has done in United Kingdom, for instance. But I think let's say the presidents of the universities are aware of this, but there are different research agencies looking for different things. So I think we will be able to keep a balance.
So a mix between this. Yes. To use biomaterials in more advanced applications, there seems to be a huge need for building new competences. You have shown this cross-disciplinary approach, and also using advanced characterization methods. How do you handle this in Japan? It seems like you are able to do this in a very efficient way.
In terms of nanocellulose, to apply the materials and commercialize it, we need various kind of expertise to realize it. But bio-based materials a little bit differ with fossil resource-based material, because our human being not generating that. As I told you, I think 99.9% of how can I say, the job is trees. They already done it since 200 million years ago, 300 million years ago. That's why I think basically we need a dialogue with trees. What do you want to be? And what is your ambition? So always we have to keep on dialogue with trees. Then some days maybe we can produce such a kind of materials based on their wish or soul of trees. I think biomass is very special from that viewpoint. And our mentality, Japanese mentality, like that. Them, like a Zen monk, like that. But I think Swedish people also you have a similar mentality to the nature. So bio-based materials are like that. We have to keep on dialogue with nature. Sometimes with company.
I think you have comment from.
I think that's a very beautiful way of describing it. And if we could be successful in giving that kind of descriptions of what this is about, maybe it could be easy to attract young people to study all the different subjects that is needed in order to have this really truly cross academic and cross industry cooperation, and also with the contribute from the public sector, of course. And I think I really have the same opinion as you. I think the Japanese sense of nature and the ability of having sort of a dialogue with the tree, I think a lot of Swedes can sort of apply to that and relate to that. So I think there is we are sort of soulmates in this area. But I think, to be real serious about that, I think we have a big challenge when it comes to attracting new competence, and we have to find new ways of describing what this is about. And could we do it from a more philosophical, or maybe a spiritual way? I think that could be one way, actually.
Yeah, so I think the basic thing is the sense of wonder of nature, which is the most important driving force to utilize biomass or bio-based material. We need it, and we shouldn't forget.
Oh.
And maybe one final comment. I just wanted to reinforce what Tom said about how can I say, patience and long-term commitment. So the example was carbon fibers. So they've been around for 50 years, and now the business is really booming. It's going into the automotive business, and it will be a very big difference. And I think nanocellulose is, one has to think about nanocellulose along the same lines. We need patience. It's going to take time, but there's no doubt that because of the performance advantages, we will see large use of it in the future.
Thank you. We are now opening up for the audience to ask questions. Yes, please.
Thank you very much for the inspiring lectures and all the valuable information. I'm Yuta Goto from Chalmers. I have a question about raw material sourcing for cellulose nanofiber. Actually, I'm from the building sector, doing wooden buildings. And I feel that there could be a potential conflict between those two sectors when it comes to the raw material sourcing. If both countries, Sweden and Japan, have any policies, future policies or visions about it, I would like to know. Thank you.
Who would like to start? Japanese friends?
Yes. Okay. So your question is a conflict between the nanocellulose material and also building materials. So,
another way. Biomass is precious because, when it comes to wood, we can capture CO2 in it. If we have longer longevity of the material in the use phase, of course it's beneficial for the climate. But it's used for, like this long-lasting materials, like car parts or whatever. Maybe this is something that we should be more careful, like the longevity of the material shortened if we use the raw pure wood for cellulose or nanotechnology related things.
So far, to my knowledge, in our country, we have plenty amounts of planted trees, which is maybe every year keep on growing. And as long as we utilize it properly, never conflict occurs. Conflict never occurs between the building material utilization and pulp and papers utilization. I believe that.
And if I could follow this, I can speak very loudly. So then the question is, like, from where the raw material to the nanocellulose fiber coming from? Because I mean, the Japanese construction companies and pulp and paper companies, I don't know if they have the same source of the forest, or if there is any clear difference, different ownership of the forests.
I think when we process trees to have a timber, of course we can get lots of the waste. Now most of the such waste burning to get the energy. But also we can utilize such a kind of waste to make nanofiber. And also other less used wood or unused wood, also we can make nanofibers from that. We don't care about the size of timber, size of wood. So that means I think no confliction between the building material or other applications.
Any comments?
No, I think that's correct.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes, please.
I just like to comment here that we have in Sweden very many different projects to get from cellulose, from different than nanocellulose. So this is just a matter of time again, and you will have your material. I know that from Japan you are making all kinds of building materials from many sources, not only nanocellulose, cellulose in many forms. And in the future, you can see from algae, from anything that is growing, you can with cellulose. And there is so many projects going on. So I think that is just the amount of research.
Okay, more questions? Okay, and I would like to thank our panel for a very good discussion and a very good seminar. Thank you.
Please remain at the podium, everyone. From Eva, we have a small gift for all the speakers. So, Mikael, could you help me hand them over? There's one for you as well, actually. So I have to figure this out.
Hi, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks.
Eva.
And with that, we close, but I would also like to add one thing that I forgot in my introduction, and that is to just announce that Eva, since a couple of months, is running a project which is cross-industrial and cross-sectorial on the future or innovation in the forest industries. And Lars Berglund is on the steering committee of that project. I think you got started recently with 1 or 2 steering committee meetings. So it looks into how different sectors can learn from each other and what sort of strategies should Sweden adopt. So we will probably, you will report back on that in a couple of months and in the year to come, as long as the project goes on. So with that, I'd like to close. And for all of you who registered for the dinner, we'll have dinner in one of the dinner rooms. We will find out which way to go, if it's left or right. So bear with us for a few moments. So thank you.